Are you a little more old-fashioned and think that these big SUVs are overrated and you'd rather have yourself a full-size car? Well, then you might be in the market for a Chevy Impala. Today's buy or bust high miles review is on a 2015 Chevy Impala with 120,000 miles. Now, 120,000 miles is a little bit lower than we usually do, but these cars have been out for a while, so we have a pretty good idea on the common problems on these guys. Let's take a walk around. Now, as far as styling, I gotta say, when these cars came out, I was blown away. I'm not necessarily a big, like, full-size car guy, but I thought Chevy did a really good job on these cars. I thought they were styled really well. Now, as far as common problems, I really don't have much to talk about on the outside. Of course, if they're painted in white, sometimes that will peel because that's just pretty much every car, especially Chevys. Rust could be an issue, but nothing on this car. They're a little bit too new to get a lot of those issues. There's no real premature wear concerns or anything like that on the outside. They hold up pretty well. Paint shines nice. Headlights aren't oxidized. I got nothing really to talk about other than I think they look nice. Under the hood of the Impala here, we got a quiet and good sounding 3.6 liter V6 engine that makes 305 horsepower and 264 pound-feet of torque. These 3.6 liter engines came out a long time ago. They started out and had a fair amount of timing chain issues. Luckily, GM has improved that over the years, but it's still not unheard of. Even on these newer ones, it's just a lot less common than the first generations. These timing chain issues are caused by either lack of oil in the engine or extending oil changes too long. And the timing chain will jump and ruin your engine. And like I said, this was very common on these exact 3.6 liters back in the day, but GM had made a ton of improvements, larger oil passageways. They changed oil change intervals to make them more frequent so you run into less of these issues, and have vastly improved the problem to where I'm really not even concerned about it, but it's not completely unheard of to have that issue. Now on these cars, if you got to check engine light, there's usually like 3 things that are the most common, but there could be other things too. Number 1, this rubber boot right here between your air filter and the intake for the engine dries out and goes bad. And in fact, this one is not cracked through, but is all dried out as well. This is one of the most common problems. It is super simple to replace. I would not even worry about it, but it is something you want to check because you're going to get a check engine light. It's going to run really rough. It's not going to want to start. It's going to be a problem. And that's because of this sensor right here. The mass airflow sensor monitors how much air is coming into the engine. Now these get dirty because sometimes the air is dirty coming through, and that will also cause a check engine. So you got to clean those guys up from time to time. Now, the next common check engine light issue is the purge valve. The purge valve is part of the emission system. It's so we don't hurt the environment, but I'm not terribly concerned about it. They're easy to replace. They're not expensive. They don't cause a ton of problems, but they could make it a little harder to start if you've refueled, different things like that. But overall, I wouldn't worry about it very much. Overall, I actually do trust this engine. I think it's a pretty solid engine. GM has improved it a lot over the prior generations, which I did not like at all. Now on to the next major mechanical component, and that is the 6-speed transmission that this engine is bolted up to. This is kind of where the Impala maybe falls a little bit short. The transmissions in these don't generally completely fail where you're completely stranded. However, they do have solenoids that go bad. There's actually a service bulletin out as well on them. It's that common that they're aware of the problem. These solenoid issues can cause hard shifts, delayed shifts, shudders kind of as you're driving. Just can make your driving experience a little rough. The other common problem is the torque converter can fail. That is a more major and more expensive fix than the solenoids, but is not as common as the solenoids. It does happen, but not terribly frequently. One of the big things is just change your transmission fluid. I feel like I say this all the time, but changing the transmission fluid, even sometimes before you think you need to, will greatly help out with these issues. The last thing I'll add, and this seems to be with all manufacturers nowadays, is the GM does have some software updates that they can do to the transmission. I've heard that sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. It just depends if the parts inside have failed or not. Now we're moving on to the interior, where a full-size car is really supposed to shine. If you have a full-size car, you want it to be comfortable, maybe even a little luxurious. Now this is by no means a Mercedes, BMW, Cadillac, or a luxury car. That being said, I do think the Impala made such great improvements over the prior generation. This is a comfortable interior, place to be, great to live with on a day-to-day. It's not perfect by any stretch. Style-wise, I actually don't love the dash. I think the dash they made just a little too funky for my taste. Now, most of the materials that you touch inside the interior here are nice, the ones you interact with the most frequently. However, I will say it does feel a little GM plasticky, things that, you know, people complain about on a few different things, like the glove box, the center console door, this compartment right here. They all just feel real cheap and plasticky. Now, as far as actual problems on the interior, there's not too much to talk about, but there is a few little electronic things. The dash lights flickering is pretty common. It's not doing it on this car, but it is something you maybe want to look out for. The MyLink Chevrolet infotainment system is okay. I think it's better than some on the market, worse than others. It can have some glitches, Bluetooth doesn't want to connect, things like that. The other one is your key can get stuck in the ignition. That's generally the switch inside your shifter here, or you have to like play with the shifter to get it to actually like release your key. That's somewhat common as well. And as far as actual wear and tear, everything has worn really nicely. I was actually super impressed with the leather on the seats, the suede, the steering wheel, all of that stuff shows almost no wear at all for a car that's 10 years old and 120,000 miles. Now in the rear seat of the Impala, and this is where the full-size cars are supposed to be the best. It's supposed to have the most legroom, headroom, all of that stuff, and just be a comfortable place, kind of like you're riding around in a limo. This does not feel like you're riding around in a limo, but there is plenty of space. My biggest complaint, and the first thing I noticed, is this seat sits low. It should be up a little bit higher. It feels like you're a little kid sitting here. Your legs are all propped up. But as far as actual legroom, headroom, all of that, you're fine. I really like that they included the nicer, softer materials on the door panels and things. They didn't have to necessarily do in the rear. A lot of manufacturers don't do that. There's cup holders in each door. It's not a bad place to be on a road trip or something like that, but I was a little surprised at how hard the seat was and just the sort of seating position that you're in. Now, the trunk space is a highlight on the Chevy Impala. Full-size car, you got full-size luggage space. You can put all your luggage, go on a road trip, go out to the desert, dig a hole, whatever you need to do, you got the space to do it with the Impala. And honestly, I think it has more space than most of the mid-size SUVs that people are commonly buying. We are going out for our test drive in the Chevy Impala. Now, I went on a test drive with one of these when they first came out. I couldn't afford it, I don't think. I probably wasted the salesman's time. But when these came out, I truly looked at them and I was like, that is a beautiful car and I want to go check it out. Now, the one I went had the two-tone, like light brown leather interior and everything. I thought it was beautiful, except for one thing, and that is this steering wheel. I don't know who designed the look of the steering wheel on these, like who thought that that was a pretty design, but they're just ugly. And I can't quite figure it out. But other than that, it's not my favorite style-wise interior, but they're pretty comfortable. They're pretty nice on a day-to-day. First thing we always do is get on it a little bit. Oh yeah. One thing, even though I never really loved the 3.6 liter V6, they have always had good power. And this is no different. 0 to 60 is somewhere around 7 seconds, which for a full-size car, it's not fast, but it'll get out of its own way for sure. Now, we aren't on a terribly bumpy road here, but one of the complaints that people have, not so much that the struts and shocks go bad, it's that they're too rough from the factory and people buy either aftermarket ones, or I don't know if they updated them, but they say that they replaced them and that helps the ride significantly. I will say the ride is stiff, but I don't really mind it. Maybe if I lived you know, somewhere that I'm going over speed bumps all the time, I would. But I don't mind it on the road we're on. Now we are going around some turns here, and it feels pretty good. Steering feel is light. I mean, it's full-size car-like, which usually is not very sporty. The engine feels sporty, and transmission actually shifts really good. I like how it downshifts. It's warning me that I'm going out of my lane, because I did. But the steering feel, it does feel like a full-size car. One of the things we didn't talk about under the hood was fuel issues. These are direct injection, which means there's a fuel pump in the actual tank, and then there's one under the engine that's the high pressure fuel pump, and then the fuel rail itself. And there can just be issues with any of that failing, the wiring, different things, and causing you some problems, some rough idles. Maybe it won't even start if it's not getting any fuel. This is not overly common, but it is something that came up in my research. So it's one of the things you want to, you know, if you got a check engine light, you definitely want to check out. Now, the car that I had that was a direct competitor to this is the Chrysler 300. We've had a couple of those, and I always like the 300s a lot. I like this a lot too. I've not driven the full-size, you know, Ford Taurus, so I can't really compare it too much to those. But I'd like to do a head-to-head with all three someday, just to see which one is my favorite. But I think I'll like them all, honestly. I think they all made a pretty good full-size car. I will say I don't have any clunks in the suspension, anything like that. I actually think these are pretty reliable as far as suspension parts go. Obviously, when you get up in this mileage, you're going to start to have some in any car. It does not matter the manufacturer. But I think they're almost less common in these than some of the other manufacturers. The only noise that I really hear is a little bit of wind noise. It's not terrible at all, but I do hear some. Now, the last thing I gotta say before we go back and decide if this thing is a buy or a bust is fuel mileage. And actually, the 3.6 for a full-size car, I think, does pretty good. It is 19 in the city, 29 out on the highway. Anything that hits almost 30 miles to the gallon for this size of a car, I think is pretty good. Back from the test drive, and now it's time to decide if this thing is a buy or if it's a bust. What really impressed me with these Impalas is these actually hold their value better than other vehicles in this segment. These run about $8,000 to $10,000 with this mileage on them. Obviously, you could probably get it cheaper if you're looking at an even higher mileage one, but that generally means that you're looking at a reliable and overall well-built car. These cars are not perfect. They still have some common problems. The biggest one that I am concerned about is the transmission issues, but I don't see enough true transmission failures to tell someone not to buy one, even if they have some of those hard shifts and things that are a little bit of an annoyance on a day-to-day. This car also is an oddball car. There is no more full-size cars hardly at all. I don't even know if there was a handful of them in 2015. And so if you're in the market for a full-size car, you have limited options, and this one provides a lot of value for the money. So that's why today we're calling the Chevy Impala a buy. Might be controversial, but I do think that you will get a good amount of use out of one, even if you buy it with 150,000 miles on it. If you have a Chevy Impala, I want to hear about your experience. I want to hear if you've had any of the transmission or any other problems that we've mentioned in this, or if there's something I missed, put that in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching.